When a little and cute baby girl walked into the shelter, no one expected what happened. Next, a German shepherd, silent for years, suddenly began to cry the moment he saw her. Staff and visitors froze. Why was this dog in tears? The truth behind that moment will break your heart. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The shelter was filled with the echoes of barking, whining, and the restless sound of paws scratching against metal bars. Families strolled down the aisles, glancing at each cage, before moving on, searching for the perfect companion to take home. But at the very end of the row sat a German shepherd who never barked, never wagged his tail, and never tried to catch anyone's attention. His dark eyes seemed heavy with a sadness too deep for words. While other dogs jumped excitedly at the sight of visitors, he only pressed his head against the cold bars, watching silently as people passed him by. It was as if he had already given up hope of ever being chosen. Day after day, he sat there in quiet resignation, waiting not for just any family, but for someone he hadn't forgotten, someone he longed to see again. That afternoon, the shelter doors creaked open and a family stepped inside. A young couple entered, quietly, but it was the little girl walking between them who immediately caught everyone's attention. Dressed in a pink dress with her blonde hair neatly pinned to the side, she clutched her mother's hand with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Her small footsteps echoed softly against the concrete floor as her wide eyes darted from one kennel to the next. The shelter was noisy, dogs barking, tails wagging, metal clanging, but she seemed lost in her own world, scanning each cage with unusual intensity. It wasn't just curiosity. It was as if she was searching for something, or perhaps someone. Her father knelt beside her. "Do you see one you like, sweetheart?" he asked gently. But the little girl didn't respond. Instead, she released her mother's hand, drawn forward as though an invisible thread was pulling her deeper into the rows of kennels. Then, halfway down the aisle, she froze. Her eyes widened, her breath caught, and she whispered a single word under her breath. Her gaze locked onto a lonely German shepherd at the far end of the corridor. The moment the German shepherd lifted his head and saw the little girl, something extraordinary happened. His usual stillness shattered. His ears perked, his body trembled, and then his eyes began to well with tears. A low whimper escaped his throat, followed by a heartbreaking cry that echoed through the shelter. Visitors stopped in their tracks, staring in disbelief. This dog, who had remained silent and withdrawn for so long, was suddenly alive with emotion. He pressed his paws desperately against the bars, stretching toward the little girl as though he needed to reach her, as though he had finally found what he'd been waiting for. The little girl's reaction was just as powerful. Her eyes filled with tears, and she pressed her tiny hand against the cold metal cage. "It's him," she whispered shakily, her voice breaking. Tears streamed down her cheeks as the shepherd cried louder, pawing frantically, his tail beginning to thump against the floor. The bond was undeniable, raw, and overwhelming. The entire shelter seemed to fall into silence. Workers exchanged bewildered glances. Families who had come to find their own pets stood frozen, unable to look away from the miraculous scene unfolding before them. The shelter workers exchanged uneasy glances. They had never seen the German shepherd behave this way. For months he had been the quiet one, the dog who seemed invisible no matter how many people passed by. He never barked, never wagged, never begged for attention until now one of the staff members approached, cautiously, clipboard in hand. "This is strange," she murmured. "He's never reacted like this to anyone." Her voice carried a mixture of wonder and worry. Another worker shook his head. He was found wandering the streets half starved, no collar, no microchip. "We don't know where he came from or who he belonged to, but the shepherd didn't seem to care about their doubts. His entire being was locked onto the little girl. His cries grew softer now, almost pleading, as if he was afraid she might disappear if he let go for even a moment. The staff could only watch in stunned silence. Something unexplainable was happening, and deep down they all felt it. This was no ordinary meeting between a sheltered dog and a stranger. The little girl's mother knelt down beside her, brushing a tear from her daughter's cheek. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" she asked softly. But the girl shook her head, her eyes never leaving the German shepherd, who was still crying behind the bars. With trembling lips, the child whispered, "Mom, this is him. This is Max." The parents froze. The name hung heavy in the air. Maximum, their beloved dog who had vanished months earlier without a trace. The little girl had cried herself to sleep for weeks after he disappeared. Posters had been hung. Searches had been made. But hope eventually faded. They had been forced to believe he was gone forever. Now standing before them was a dog with the same soulful eyes, the same markings, the same reaction only Max would have. Shelter staff exchanged skeptical looks. "It's possible," one admitted hesitantly, "but dogs often look alike. Are you sure?" The little girl nodded fiercely, tears streaming. "He remembers me. I know it's him." And, judging by the way the German shepherd pressed desperately against the cage, whimpering her name without words, no one in the room could deny the truth. The shelter room fell into a hush as the little girl slowly stepped closer to the cage. Her tiny hands trembled, her heart pounding in her chest. Everyone, her parents, the staff, and the visitors, watched in silence, waiting to see what would happen next. The girl wiped her tears and whispered softly, almost too quiet to hear, "Max, come here, boy." The effect was instant. The German shepherd froze, his ears twitching, his body stiff with recognition. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to stop. Then, with a sudden burst of emotion, he leapt to his feet, tail wagging furiously, crying out in sharp, broken barks of joy. He pressed his nose against the bars, desperately licking the little girl's fingers as she reached through, sobbing with happiness. The staff gasped. There was no denying it now. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't imagination. This was recognition. Pure, undeniable recognition. Tears blurred the girl's vision as she whispered again, louder. "This time, I told you it's Max. He never forgot me." And in that single, breathtaking moment, nobody doubted her anymore. The decision was made in seconds. A staff member hurried to unlock the cage, fumbling with the keys, as the German shepherd waited impatiently. The moment the door swung open, the dog bolted forward, not with fear, not with hesitation, but with unrestrained love. He barreled into the little girl's arms, nearly knocking her off balance. She collapsed to her knees, clutching him tightly as his tail thumped wildly against the floor. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with his wet nose as he smothered her with frantic kisses. Gasps and murmurs filled the shelter, but no one dared interrupt. It was as if the entire world had vanished, leaving only a little girl and her long-lost best friend. The shepherd buried his head against her chest, whimpering softly as though promising never to leave again. And the girl whispered through sobs, "You're home now, Max. You're finally home." The paperwork was signed faster than anyone could remember. The shelter staff still in awe of what they had. Witness couldn't hold back their smiles. For them, this wasn't just an adoption. It was a miracle. The little girl walked proudly beside her parents, one hand gripping the leash, the other stroking the thick fur of her beloved Max. The German shepherd trotted happily at her side, his eyes brighter than they had been in months, his steps lighter with every stride toward freedom. As the family reached the shelter doors, the girl paused and turned back. Her cheeks were still wet with tears, but her smile was radiant. "Thank you